Good evening and welcome. It is the final curtain for the 23-24 season for the Magpie Circle podcast. The final curtain too for several players who were such integral parts of the club getting back into the EFL. Kind of feels tonight like the end of an era in a way. No Luke Williams left us for earlier this season. Several of the most influential players who got us through those playoff campaigns. It's a strange one this evening. I think it's fair to say that the retained list or released list has been met with fairly universal approval by supporters. A little bit ruthless, say many, but fair. We'll get the thoughts of Mark Stallard this evening. Now, Mark's been on the receiving end of those retained lists. We'll find out what it's actually like to be a professional footballer when you are actually physically told face to face you are no longer wanted, you are being shown the door. How do you deal with that? How do you cope with that? We'll be delving into that. Season ticket prices published, as Joe Palmer had told us on the Magpie Circle probably 10 days, 11 days ago now. There will be a very modest increase. All the price bands would be retained. For me, Notts County is the club of choice for the young people of Nottingham. £25 if you're 12 and under. £52, which I think is exceptional value for under 18s. So, it's just over £2 per game if you are 18, between 13 and 18, which I think is excellent. 117 for 18 to 21. 22 to 25 is £175, which I still think is exceptional value. If you're in your early 20s, you can be coming to watch Notts for roughly £8 a game, and then it goes up for full adult price 25 and above, 405 in the Pavis, 300 and I can't read my writing, 325, 375 in the Cop. Your thoughts on season ticket prices? We have to have a little mention of Forest Green for those of us who went down there. Your thoughts on that? Does it have any bearings on next season? A true end of season game, if ever I've seen one. Lots of messages on the message board. Stel, thank you for joining us. The last time this season. Encapsulate the season for me. What have you made of it all?
Well, yeah, pleasure to be here again. Look, it's been overall a disappointing season. I think that's probably a fair word to use on it. Promised so much, the momentum that we carried into the season, and the promise of the first 3 months, the results, the performances, goals flying in left, right, and centre, which has been a sort of a key factor of the good and the bad this season. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it was proven, when we said early on in the season that if you concede too many goals, you don't generally find yourself at the top of the table. And that is the way it proved. That we could sustain it for 3 months, probably till the end of October. But then after that, it proved too much. Still scored plenty, still conceded plenty. And that is the sort of overriding disappointment of this season, because we've got so much attacking prowess and capability that we couldn't just marry that up with the defensive solidity that's required. And we've spoken, at length, and like I say, this summer will be fascinating in terms of how they address that, how they balance that for next season. But ultimately disappointing, and I think you can't sugarcoat these things. It promised a lot, and it looked like we were riding the crest of a wave. But we fell away. Performances, they might have been, overperforming for the first 3 months, as we heard sort of Richard Montague say, as you say, 10, 11 days ago, they might have been overperforming them first 3 months. But when you look at the teams that are maybe not just the automatic, I know Wrexham have gone up again, but they have got a big budget and they've added considerably, haven't they? But if you look at the teams that are in the playoffs, the likes of, Crawley, Crewe, Doncaster, which is the absolute headline grabber, I think, for me, and MK Dons, I think you'd look at that and go, yeah, it really has been a missed opportunity. But and I say with the retain list coming out today, we hope that's something that the club have learned from. I'm sure they will, and we'll go on to the retained list and what that probably means for this time. Well, for us for next season.
Okay, so we know our flock dials in from literally all four corners of the globe. Let's just do a quick run through of those players who have been released. We'll get the thoughts of our flock on the message board and Stell's view as well. So, in terms of, there's a total of 6 players who have been released by the club. Aidan Baldwin, and that's probably the most contentious. Richard Brindley, Toby Adebayo-Rowling, Jim O'Brien, that split quite a few people as well. John Bostock and Luther Munakandafa, all released. Kedwin Scott, option exercised by the club to keep him at the club. And out of contract and offered a new deal is Geraldo Bajrami. The loans that were here are all returned to their clubs. Luca Ashby-Hammond back to Fulham. Jaden Warner already gone back to Norwich. Charlie Colcutt back to Crewe. So that kind of leaves, and under contract, but in the old days we would call it placed on the transfer list. The new euphemism available for transfer is Aidan Stone, Connell Rawlinson, and Will Randall. That leaves us with the existing squad of, as it stands, Sam Slocum, Tiernan Brooks, 2 keepers, Kyle Cameron, Lewis Macari, Lucian Mahovo, Adam Chickson, Jody Jones, Aaron Naman, Matt Palmer, Scott Robertson, Dan Crowley, Sam Austin, James Sanderson, Macaulay Langstaff, David McGoldrick, Junior Marias, and Alessandra Jatta. So that's kind of where we are on the numbers. Just before we go to Stell, I'm going to read out some of your thoughts on the retained list. Only come out a few hours ago. So Jurgen Halligan, no shocks for me. Would have thought Jim could have been offered a coaching role, either with first teams or with the youngsters coming through. PJ Defiance, I'd have liked to have kept Toby and John Bostock on another 1-year contract apiece for John to see how he plays when Matty Palmer returns back. Rich Hawksworth, club has done a good job with the list, in my opinion. Gives me hope they understand the issues. Pythagorean, evening all. Perhaps we have not been brutal enough, says Pythagorean. Marias, Slocum, Chickson, and even Cameron. Or maybe my standards are set too high. Rich Hawksworth continue. Gives me some confidence they understand and are prepared to deal with the obvious issues. Ian Cooksey, the club have got it spot on. No room for sentiment in football. Rich Hawksworth, tongue-in-cheek. Sorry, no, not tongue-in-cheek. I'm getting confused here. Slightly surprised Junior Marias hasn't been made available. Shane Walker, I, for one, am happy with the list, but as already been mentioned, would have liked to have given Jim O'Brien a coaching role. What else have we got? Ian G says, with Jim and Bostock going, we are lacking in leaders. Pete Cowlishaw, I think the list shows a positive intention for the closed season. I hope I'm right. Ian Cooksey adds, signing a vocal leader is key. Cameron is not that, in my opinion, and would become a better player without the captaincy. What else have we got? Ian G, shame the club don't offer instalment packages. He's talking about season tickets. £400 in the Pavis for an adult over 25 takes some finding in the current climate. An instalment package may encourage some to take the plunge. Looking forward to hearing the views on the retain list, says Robert Holland. Wish them all well, but arguably the right decisions, I feel, have been taken. What else have we got? Thank you to both of you for the excellent shows throughout the season. Have a great summer, says Mark. That's very kind of you. Wavy Yoda, I think that's a new one on me. Sad to see Toby go. Bostock should have got another year, maybe. Surprised to see only Stone on the transfer list, though, as he's not the only one full of errors this season. Thank you for great coverage this season, says Dave Hart. Sean, roll on next season. Yeah, this is the last show. Me and Stell's had enough. Stell's going to go out open the batting somewhere as a lefty. I'm just being put out to pasture for a few months. Ian Greasby, renewed my season ticket today. So please, we've had the option of another year for Kedwin. Great business by the club. Renewed my season ticket today. What else have we got? John H. We should have offered Jim a player coaching role, leader on and off the pitch, especially during extensive warming up session. Club really missed a trick here. Alan Cotty, slightly surprised at Bostock, thought they might offer one more year. We don't know why Jim is going. Coaching elsewhere, question mark. Baldwin, many thanks for those goals against Boreham Wood, but for me, too many errors this year. All right, there's loads more. We'll come on to them. Stell, right. You've been through this yourself. Retain list, not retain, released. From a professional, before we go through them all, give me a professional footballer's viewpoint on what this is like. You must have been through it, I presume, on several occasions. Probably not very nice. Probably sometimes handled better than others. As a professional footballer, what is this day, or when you get told the news? How do you get told the news? What's it like?
Yeah, it's a time. Well, it can be a time of uncertainty. It obviously depends on what kind of season you've had. You know, when you know you're coming out of contract, and with focusing on the lads that have come out of contract, you know you're in the last year of your contract. So performances are absolutely vital as to what may or may not happen at the end of the season. So when you actually get there, you should have a fairly good idea of what's likely to happen. Now, I think with Notts this season, I think there's probably 2 or 3 of them lads maybe wouldn't have been sure. I think a few might have known, but I think 1 or 2, would have maybe thought, oh, have I just done enough? Will they maybe just give me another contract? Maybe just give me another year? But I think, as people have said, Jim O'Brien, at the age he's at, probably knew he wasn't going to get another solely playing contract. May have suspected, or may have hoped, or may have wanted, maybe thought he might have get something along the coaching lines with a player coach idea, but there's nothing about that. We know he does his coaching at Sheffield United as well, don't we? So yes, there might be issues there, but I think for the rest of the players, it is an uncertain time. You sort of assuming that most of them players wanted to stay or would have liked to have stayed if they'd have had the opportunity. Then it can be unnerving, unsettling. But one thing, I think the first thing to say is that all them players, absolutely all them players, leave with, I think, every fan's gratitude for what they've done for the club as well. There's nobody leaving with a tail between the legs, sort of saying, well, didn't perform or didn't work out or whatever. They've given everything for the club, and notably sort of Jim O'Brien, obviously, Aidan Baldwin for his goals against Boreham Wood, of course, and as he has been a regular fixture in the team. So I think he'd be, maybe a little bit disappointed, but that is the ruthless nature of football. And if we go back, well, criticism I've heard this season is, if you go back to last summer, the criticism may be that the club were a little bit sentimental and a little bit too nice, if you like, in awarding 2-year contracts to all those out of contract a year ago that got us out of the National League. You could argue that they deserved their opportunity. So, it's 6 and 2 threes, but I think the club, again, it's an example of maybe the club learning, and certainly the club identifying what problems need solving. And the only way you can do that, and the other factor that always comes into that is always in the mix, but he's never front and centre, is that the wages that each individual player is on make each case an individual case. So you could have a player that's been kept on, but he's kept on maybe because he's on a lot less money than a player that's been released. The players that have been released will free up money in the budget for players to come in the summer to replace them. So I think that's been a factor as well. So when you look at it, there's established names, say Baldwin, Jim, Richard Brinley, another one who's been a fantastic servant for the club. And these players, I imagine, will go and find a club without too much difficulty. They're decent players, but I think it is the circumstances of football, the ruthless nature, the cutthroat nature, but it's how it has to be. There is no real room for sentiment in football. It's a business. It's everybody's looking after it. As a player, you're a business in yourself, and as a club, the business is not county, and you have to do the best for the club. So, all them players leave with thanks, I'm sure, from all the fans. But I think it's sad to see them go, of course, but it's exciting times for what may come in the summer.
Aidan Baldwin. Now, you and I had this discussion off air, and you were kind of an opinion that Aidan would be released, and I was kind of a fence sitter. I wasn't sure. Do you think Aidan might have been unlucky in the sense we're talking about freeing up slots, aren't we here? And several of the back four are under contract, and I think you'd have to say we need more personnel in the back line to choose from for next season. Has Aidan been unlucky or not to have been one of the minority of defenders who was out of contract?
Yeah, and that's it. I said to you that I thought he'd be released because he's out of contract. Now, had there been other members of the defenders out of contract, I think they'd have been in the same situation. I was very much of a sort of I was semi-aware of who was out of contract, and it would purely have been that I think the club know they need to address things. They need to bring in, a handful of signings, and you have to free up funds to do that. And you can't free up funds by, we'll release a couple of youngsters and we'll release, somebody else who's a squad player who's maybe not earning as much. You can only do that by releasing your main players and players that, although he's played a good number of games over the 2 seasons, he'll be on a decent wage as well. Another factor is that he was a Luke Williams sort of signing, wasn't he, brought in because Luke had worked with him previously. Yes. Obviously, Luke no longer at the club. So I feel for Aidan Baldwin. I thought he would be released based on the scenario that he's out of contract. But had that been another defender out of contract, they'd have been released as well. You say the same about Richard Brinley. He's only being released because he's out of contract. I think had anybody said he's under contract for another year, I don't think anyone would have had a problem with it. So, it's a victim of circumstance. But again, that when you're coming into your final year, that. I've said many a times, you could make a case for Aidan being, as a 1v1 defender individually, arguably one of not better defenders. But too many mistakes, too many individual errors has ultimately, he's paid the price for that. But it'll be a great signing for somebody else. Absolutely don't imagine he'll have a problem finding another decent club as well, and wish him all the best. But it is sometimes circumstances can contrive against you, and I think that's the case. But again, you don't just want to we'll give him another year just out of it's a bit brutal. Football is a brutal game. Football is cutthroat. That's why you have a contract, and that's why when you're at the end of the contract, you are vulnerable if you don't perform. Say every game's your audition to get a new contract. And unfortunately, if you don't perform and you don't convince those that are handing out the contracts, then you don't get one. And there should be no charity. So, but again, fantastic servant. What he's done for the club will go down in the history books, and will be fondly remembered at Meadow Lane.
Some more thoughts from the flock. Ian Griesby says, having digested the retained list, it builds confidence that a defensive rebuild will be forthcoming. Nathan Chambers says, was always going to be a tough goodbye for some based on the promotion of last season. However, I think the list looked about right. Will be an interesting summer to say the least. We'll move on to Forest Green in a moment in the context of the overall season. Alan Cotty talking about that. Certainly wasn't great. James Shipley, with no context of how the season went, if someone told me we finished where we finished, I'd have been happy with that, as staying in the league was my minimum expectation for success. Anna Wiley says, hi Paul, watching in Lincoln with a heavy heart, so upset Mr. Bostock has gone. AD Clark, evening to you, AD. Seems like a cull of the squad. Hopefully shows intentions that quality signings need to be brought in. P.S. Hope both you and Stell are back next season. I don't think I'm going anywhere. Are you going anywhere, Stell? Have you got a new deal lined up somewhere with Gary Lineker and Dolanger Film Productions that you haven't told me about podcasting?
Not that I know of, mate. I'm not on a deal for this either. So
no. You're a free agent. You're a permanent. Yeah. You operate without a contract every week, Stell.
Absolutely. You can't get sacked if you don't get paid.
Would like to see an undisputable number one in goal, says Andrew Blatherwick, and more strength in defence. Easier said than done. Just renewed my season ticket, says Lippy Jane. Bit eye-watering in one go, I agree. 2 adults paid for. Well done, Lippy Jane. I've been speaking to the club today. You may have seen in some of the media on the evening bulletins tonight that over 500 season tickets have been renewed. That's more than double the most the club has ever done before on the opening day. So I think overall, we're all very happy. And certainly season ticket renewals are well on the way to hitting the 6,000 mark from last season. No shocks for me either, says Andy Adcock. Quite surprised how many people were suggesting we keep Baldwin when he made a series of errors. Chris Gosling, I want to see us progress. So happy with the list. But we have lost some really genuinely great guys today. And I can't help but feel a bit sad. Derek Flowers, he's of an opinion the retain list had been communicated before Saturday. I'm not so sure. The retain list explains the debacle at Forest Green on Saturday. John Parnham says Ashby Hammond is going to be a real loss. I was hoping that the club would try to retain his services. I agree that Jim should be offered a coaching role. Linda Lou's going to get her season ticket. And I think, as Stella's mentioned in response to Lippy Jane, Jim is already doing some age group coaching at Sheffield United. So whether there is an opportunity for him there already, I don't know. But he was doing his badges and doing some junior age group coaching this season, I believe, as well, while he was playing at Notts. Ian G. What else? Big Meech. Glad that Bajrami got an extension. He's a quality player, and I guess the manager hasn't seen what he can do yet. Baldwin, too many mistakes in him for me. Mine and my dad's season ticket renewed today, says Paul. Ian Cooksey, Luke Williams had said pre-season last year that it was a big season for Aidan Baldwin, and the only person who could address this was Aidan himself. Toby, great lad, says Big Meech, but featured sparingly, 19 appearances in 23-24. Tiz says, fantastic Mark Stallard, a big get-in from Italy, from the Italian Magpies. Tiz, whereabouts are you in Italy, Tiz? I'm off there myself in 2 weeks, taking some Italian Serie C playoffs, as you do. Duncan Comrie, I think Jim might end up at Woking for a year with Mr. Doyle. Maybe Brins and Rawlo also. Might be worth keeping an eye out whether Michael Doyle, head coach down at Woking, is going to reunite some of those Notts players. This time last year, says Big Meech, I said I'd be happy if we solidify our return to EFL, which we have done. Season has been a success. I felt Bostock lost a bit of pace towards the back end of the season for me, says Mark. Right. There's just, we all know we had Richard Montague on here, and he spoke about, and I think the phrase that he used, the number of goals conceded, embarrassing. And with Aidan being released, Richard Brindley being released, Luca Hammond sent back, Aidan Stone being placed on the transfer list, which I guess is a clear hint that at this moment in time, the club would not be envisaging he's going to be the regular number one. I guess this is a declaration that they are looking to significantly or do as much as they possibly can to change personnel. How significantly do you think Notts need to change defensive personnel? Are we talking an entire back line, new goalkeeper? A lot of people say a minimum of 2 centre halves. Is it deeper than that? Do you have to look at potentially a difference in style of play? We've spoken, what more do you want Jody Jones to do? We're now saying as a wing back, he's got to be a better defender as well as all the other things he's already doing. I mean, what do you want to see defensively?
Look, we've spoke about that. Yeah, the balance of the team has to change. And again, without rehashing old conversations, that can be done, by bringing in better personnel. So the fact that you look just in the defensive slots, Aidan Baldwin's going, Richard Brindley's going, Connor Rawlinson obviously been made available, and Will Randall as well, but they're under contract. So they'll be here subject to any takers. But the fact that they've got rid of, I'm going to say that the players that would probably play if they were fit, Aidan Baldwin, obviously, and probably Richard Brindley, until he got his injury, was pretty much a regular. The fact of the matter that they've been released is that they are backing themselves and they are saying that, yeah, we could give you another contract, but we think we can go out and get better. We think for the same money, we can go out and get better. So if that's 2 better defenders than them 2, then there's 2 people who are going to come in and, well, be first choice, subject to form and, how they play, but certainly not squad players. They're going to be 2 players that are going to come in and be first choice centre halves, if you like. So add into what is already going to still be there, so I'm assuming that Connell and Will Randall, let's just assume that they still stay. You've got at least 2 first team centre halves coming in to replace Brindley and to replace Aidan Baldwin. So, that helps. Of course it does. The better the personnel obviously helps. But again, it still marries into the balance of the team. You're right. We've spoken about Aaron the Man, Jody Jones. All the good they give you, they do give you a slight problem in that they aren't defensive-minded players. They're essentially wingers. So again, how do the club address that? Do we go out and buy fullbacks? Do we look to play a 4 next season? Again, I've said that wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. So watch this space, but it is a case of both. But now the bit is on going and getting better. Whoever it is on that list that we're saying, well, maybe we could have given John Bostock, first 3 months of the season was fantastic, absolutely fantastic in the middle of the park. After Christmas and what have you, not quite the same influence in and out the team a little bit, few injuries. And not quite the same, but you'd still be happy to have him line up for you, but they've gone, no, we're going to get better. That's what being released says to me. We are going to get better than what's gone out. And if that's the case, and if they do that, then all well and good. But I think they needed to free up as many slots as possible, as many pay packets as possible, to allow them the funds to go and get better. So I imagine at least 2 defenders, and I'm talking straight in first team, all being, given a level playing field, first team quality defenders. Again, a goalkeeper, I think, but they may have to shift Aidan Stone on. That's why they put him up for availability. Another midfielder, you would think, as a John Bostock replacement, whether it's like for like in terms of style or just a proper midfield player as well, but again, it's going to be somebody better. So I think it intrigues me. And this is the mouth-watering bit now, as much as it's, it's thank you and goodbye to those that have gone, but it's mouth-watering now that they've done it, that the club haven't given sentimental contracts out, haven't hedged their bets a little bit, I haven't gone, well, we'll give you another year. We'll give you another year and we'll kick the can down the road to making that tough decision. They've made tough decisions now for the benefit of the club being better. And as Richard Montague said, it is embarrassing. The amount of goals, it's 86 conceded in the league, 99 for the whole season. That is embarrassing. And to address it, yes, you've got to have better players. And once you've got them better players in, then obviously there's conversations already been had about how the team is going to look next season. But I think once Stuart Maynard has the players, has his list of players, and then first day back of pre-season, he can really have a look at, right, who fits with who, got them combinations and partnerships all over the pitch, who plays well with who, and that the first few weeks of pre-season and the first few pre-season games will solidify and quantify in his head what formation he really wants to go with next season, given the sort of the talents that he's got available to him. But until we know who they are and until he knows who they are, then it's difficult to say. We are only speculating. But I'm excited to think that, there's some decent names gone there and some decent players, but it's going to be replaced with better. And that, it should inspire us all that next season is going to be one to watch.
I think what is interesting, and a lot of fans who you talk to express this view, and no one's quite sure about recruitment metrics, particularly for defenders, because clearly offensively recruitment has been exceptional. Defensively, and that would include the goalkeeper, it's been, if you judge it on the basis of the amount of goals we have conceded, it's been extremely poor. And when fans dumb it all down, why haven't we got a 6'4" centre half that can head it? Defenders should defend first and foremost is a mantra from many people. Whereas we would appear to have placed significant importance on players being able to pass the ball and being comfortable on the ball, whereas where do you judge it taking the ball off someone else, tackling and all of those sorts of things? How, I don't know, confident, or are you expecting, from the way we spoke with Richard Montague, the club to kind of adapt some of those metrics for defenders, or do you think they're going to continue to operate the same mechanics and priorities to bringing in defenders?
Yeah, I don't see that they'll adapt the metrics necessarily, or certainly not veer away from them. In simple terms, the what they're looking for is the same, that we're not going to change the way we play. We just need better players at doing what we're doing. We saw in the National League that the team that we had and the players that we had were so good for the level that they could play this. I call it's almost total football, isn't it? How Notts want to play total football, entertaining, and they could do it in a way that was so dominant that we didn't concede loads of goals. Yeah, we conceded some, of course. But yeah, there was errors. Of course, there is. It's a if it goes wrong, it's a risky way of playing. When you play out from the back, one mistake, you're vulnerable. But let's face it, it's all over the place now. It's the way modern football is taught and coached. But we've took that step up, and as we said, it looked like some players couldn't make the step up, and certainly not as a collective. We still looked as dangerous. We still looked like we've got the goal threats, but unfortunately, we couldn't marry that with keeping it out at the other end, which is why we led to, we ended up with a 14th place finish. So whatever metrics they'll use, they'll want good defenders. They'll want defenders who can play the ball, but they'll want better, maybe things like 1v1 duels, maybe better aerial duel winning, things like that. The modern day terminology is winning duels and winning things like that. But just in basics, they want better defenders. Now, you do well to find a defender who can't pass the ball from A to B nowadays. And again, once they're coached into the way that Notts play, then hopefully it all becomes this, this clockwork sort of rotational system where when you get the ball, when the ball's in with position A, You drop into this position. It can be coached. All the bits within Knott's framework of the team can be coached. What is difficult to coach is getting a player to be faster than he is, or taller than he is, or win more headers than they naturally do, or read the game better. That is difficult. That is part of a player's innate ability. And that's something, I think the reading of the game is a massive thing, and it's very difficult to quantify in terms of data and stats, but it will present itself in the fact that you won't be getting exposed. If you read the game well, you won't be getting exposed too much. So you won't have your stats will be negative against you. If you read the game well, is it Maldini who says if he's gone to ground, it was, he's made a mistake before that. If he has to go to ground to make a tackle, he's made a mistake. And that's it. The better players read the game better. So again, we're not talking at that level, but we're talking League Two. At League Two level, the outgoing players, we're looking for them, but with an improvement. An improvement. Not that we're going to bring in a defender who can beat 6 men and rifle one in the top corner, but a defender that maybe wins 90% of his headers, doesn't let his attacker get away from him when play's going on one side of the pitch. He doesn't get caught ball watching too much. We aren't going to get a Franco Baresi in League Two, but what we want is better than what's going out. And again, there's all the metrics used for look at what Mansfield have done, look at Wrexham, look at Stockport. What have they got in them holes at the back, them round holes, round pegs, all that sort of thing? How have they gone about it? And we borrow a bit from it. So we were weak from crosses and set pieces. So does by adding height automatically make you better at that? Possibly, but it doesn't guarantee it. You go and get, but they will be looking at people at a percentage of headers won. Things like that. Goalkeepers, I'm sure they look at crosses caught. Things like that. How many, all these sort of things, and they'll have umpteen stats and loads and loads of info on different things. But it is purely about getting an upgrade on what we've got. Then it's over to the coach. Right, the framework of what we've got. And the players that are already here know the framework of what's wanted, and then it's about ingraining and integrating the new players to come in and get used to exactly how we want to play, exactly what each player's role is, and how that marries up with the person who's just to the right of you, just to the left of you, behind you, and just in front of you, and what is expected of you. And that is what pre-season's all about. So hopefully they get the business done as early as possible, and that means they get a proper clear pre-season to get working on the intricacies of it and making sure that we are better, far better than last season.
Big Meech says Stallard knows his stuff. Could listen to him for days. Calls it as it is. Been there, done it, and got the legs to prove it. Lee Stanley says, surely the collective beats the individual. To stop the cross and be more defensive isn't Jody or Aaron's game. Yet Chickson could do that, but we always played an attacking offensive lineup. A quick one amongst the flock, because Stella spoke a little bit about this 4 at the back, and on an individual fan hat, I would not disagree with that. We have played it so sparingly since the brothers really came in. I don't see it, but as fans, would you like, as part of trying to solve the defensive conundrum, clearly recruitment's a huge part of it, would you like to see us go to a 4, or do you think we then compromise too much of our attacking options? Your thoughts, please, on that one. Right, Stell, I don't want to bring it up too much because it weren't great. Forest Green, Saturday. Oh, dear me. I did talk with one of your old, I think he was a teammate of yours, one of the nicest men in football. I had a chat with him before the game. It went downhill after that. Mike Whitlow, lovely guy.
Yes, he is, yeah.
Hot guy. Yeah, so he's involved in the academy
right.
at Forest Green now. He was at Mansfield and Burton. Lovely guy. So we had a good chat before the game. I also spoke a bit to Dale Vince as well. He was wandering around in the kind of fan zone area. So I had a little chat with him, and he does seem he's not in any way, shape, or form giving up on it now they're dropping out the league. He knows he's wasted a few quid this year, but he can afford it. And he's saying to me that he is still energised and enthused by it all for Forest Green. One place we won't be going to, probably just as well. I get messages from our flock now of what you've said in the aftermatch on the way home. And someone was quoting to me, you spoke of a lack of footballing intelligence by Notts. Look, last game didn't materially affect things, but nevertheless, it possibly left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth of the 1,000+ fans that went there. What was your take on Saturday? Does it, in the grand scheme of things, you don't give a damn, or were there things that you thought you might have liked to have seen that you didn't?
No, I mean, a couple of points there. I'll come on to the lack of football intelligence quote that I made in a minute. In the grand scheme of things, no, it doesn't worry me. It nearly bored me to tears. I mean, the guy who said he could listen to me for days, that'd put you in a deep sleep, that would. But watching that game on Saturday very nearly put everyone in a deep sleep, didn't it? It was a tough watch. It was an end of season game. Look, am I concerned about it? No, because again, we've got the retain list, the release players. It's going to look different next season. So look, we'd have liked to have gone out on a win. 4 wins out of 5. Again, you always want to win games. Players want to win, and I don't think it wasn't a terrible performance. It just never had that sort of zip. We controlled the ball plenty, but it was a little bit lackluster in the final third. Certainly lacking in quality. The lack of football intelligence quote, and I said this on air, and I said that off air to Adam. They got away with it a little, because I would have absolutely roasted them. I've not been the last game of the season, had it not been a sort of dead rubber. And what I was talking about there was the corner we got in the last
right.
6 minutes. Yep. 6 minutes of added time.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a scoreboard in the ground. Everybody can see there's 96 minutes been played. Notts get the corner, don't they, on the attacking left-hand side in front of all the Notts fans. And they play it short. Not a problem with that, because that's what we do. And they play it back, and then they played it across, and then it came out to Dan Crowley, and then he sort of played it back across and back again. And it took, I don't know how long that took. It might have taken 10 seconds maximum, but at no point did we look like we had any intent of putting the ball into the penalty area to make Forest Green defend. And so the referee thought, well, time is up. I've let you take the corner. We're over time. I'll blow. And we didn't even ask Forest Green to defend. So you're 1-0 down with seconds literally of the game going, and you don't put the ball in the opposition penalty area. I don't care that that's not the way Notts do it. That is a lack of football intelligence, I'm afraid. That is a lack of common sense, brains, or taking it upon yourself to do something. So it's the last game of the season. It didn't mean anything, didn't affect anything really. So I'll just make that comment. It was a lack of football intelligence. If that had been somewhere partway through the season, we're 1 behind in a game in the last minute of the game, and we do not put the ball into a penalty area, albeit direct from a corner, or play 2, 3, 4 passes, get it across the other side to shift the defenders around, and then the ball's got to go in the penalty area. You've got to ask a question. Rather than that is like surrendering the white flag and go, well, we're going to pass the ball. Our passing stats look great. Oh, we've lost the game 1-0, never mind. But we've kept the ball for more. Possession's great. That would have, you can tell it's mildly annoyed me, but it was a end of season game. It's fine. I'll let it pass. But that really is something that should be spoken. Go, look, lads, we're all for passing the ball, and if we go back to the halfway line, that's fine with 30 minutes to go if we're doing it for a reason. But in the last minute of the game, if the alternative is, well, you lose, or you at least have a go of getting a draw, then obviously the latter's got to be the option. So that was where they show, and I think it's happened a few times, throughout the season, just a little bit of lack of, I know this is how we want to play, but at times there are exceptional reasons for why you've just got to do a little bit different sometimes. You've just got to, and I'm not talking about anybody being a maverick and, not towing the line and not doing it. I'm not talking about changing the way we play for the other 90 minutes of the game. But just in certain circumstances, you look at the situation around you and go, we have literally got seconds. He's going to blow up. If we give him an excuse and get away from his penalty, he's going to blow full-time whistle. Or even if it was half time. Do you know what? Just this once, take it short, put the ball in the box, make them defend. They didn't. That's what I said about lack of football intelligence, reading the game situation, doing something, with an ultimate aim of, if your coach pulls you up and says, hey, we don't do that, as a player, I would be right back at him saying, we've done the rest, we've passed it for 95 minutes and we've not got a goal. So for this time, we've got seconds left. I'm going to put it in the box, and hey, if it don't work out, it don't work out. But you know what? We might just get an equaliser, and you might just thank me. So that's a reason why you don't want to just have robots who do what they say they want to do. You've still got to express yourself as a player, and the better players do. You watch any game from the Premier League down, you'll still see Man City knocking the ball in the channel, booting the ball away when they're under pressure. You'll still see them putting crosses into boxes at times, not very often, but they will mix it up a little bit. Guardiola scores his first goal from a corner, near post run, near post header from a corner put in. That's Man City, who have the best possession probably of any club side in the world. So there is a case for mixing it up, and not do mix it up. I'm not saying they don't, but that specific occasion just was a bit of brain dead, and maybe the players' brains were fried by the last minute of the last game of the season. But yeah, that was what I was meaning, lacking football intelligence.
Well, Stell, you've got universal support from the flock here. I think if you were Scottish, you would be elected the Scottish First Minister with 99.9% of the vote from all the messages here. So it is an interesting contrast with fans. Atrophis says, away end was rubbish too at Forest Green, no chance. The flip side of the coin, which does carry a bit more weight, I think, Derek Flowers, Saturday didn't matter to anyone apart from the 1,200 that paid good money to witness that heatless, I think he means heartless, display. Well said, Stell, says Martin Blaney. Spot on, Stell, says Ian G. Do you fancy the head coach job? I'm with Stell, says Pythagorean. Big Meat, Stell would be a great coach. Italian Magpies send you black and white hearts. Stell, we've done it so many times this season, injury time, and we're messing about in our own half. There we go. And I'm going to digress before we go on to the next subject. Do you remember the balloons?
Yes, of course. The moment of the season.
Wilkins sent me this message. I didn't see it at the time. And apparently you can put codes and fingers up and things, right? And it sets balloons off. And I tried it on one of my business networking calls to Major League Soccer this afternoon. And the balloons came up. So I'm going to try it now. So tell me if you see balloons coming up when I do this.
Yes.
I won't do it that way.
No.
I'll do it that way. And balloons come up. There they come. Did you ever know using Zoom you can do that? And there's some other codes as well you can do. I'm not commenting what they are, but there's other hand signals you can do on Zoom. And these images come up on the screen. There you go. Useless information.
I guess I've got some hand signals that get you arrested more than balloons. Yeah.
It did cause us much merriment when we had no idea what was going on. But yeah, it works. Look, they are. Up come the balloons. There they come.
Bizarre.
It tickles me, that one. It tickles me. Right. We've discussed this before, and I think we have to go over it again, because we both spoke about head coach comes in. Results haven't been where we would want them to be. There's a debate about performance levels. There's a statement issued from the club about luck and that sort of thing. And as we explained on the show, and as the club came out, look, there's not a debate in the sense of will he, won't he. Stewart's in charge, okay, start of the season. And results will determine whether he is a successful coach for Notts County or whether he's an unsuccessful coach. Everything else, Jimmy Cyril, it's gossip. It's rubbish. But if you look at the games and the returns so far, it's just about nudging a point a game. Yeah, just about nudging a point a game. We've seen Steve Clements leave Gillingham today. They felt he hadn't delivered. He came in November, felt he hadn't delivered the requisite number of results. One thought there were two takeaways from Saturday. I think Stewart kind of knows it's important. Current form wanted to end with 4 in 5. And I wonder if he resisted the temptation to make too many changes on Saturday, because I think he wanted to maximise his chance of getting a good result. So, Mahovo comes on for a small number of minutes, having been recalled from a loan spell at Boston United. They're now into the playoff final. Got to beat Scunthorpe, crikey, saw them play Alfreton in the first playoff game. So I wondered whether he went for a tried and trusted team because he wanted to give himself the best chance of getting that result. My concern at the minute for Stewart is that we get a result one week, we're fine. We don't get a result like Forest Green. Oh, this isn't, And I just hope we're not in this cycle next season. Win one, lose one, and we're getting this seesawing effect of he's brilliant, give him time, he's better than Luke Williams, or we then seesaw, he's an ex-BT engineer, blah, and none of this kind of helps. I do think it is vital, and I know it's important with every club, every season. I think it's so important for Stewart start next season that we've at least won as many games as we've lost in the opening 10. Or otherwise, I just see this kind of seesaw effect, which won't help anyone at the club. I mean, what's your take? Because we both said you've got to sit down at the end of the season and evaluate and say what went, what didn't. What's your take on all of this?
Yeah, look, it's sort of common sense, I think, isn't it? We've got to this point, say that the statement came out backing Stewart, and that's fine. I think the club did the right thing. So I was advocating for that anyway.
Yes.
But make no mistake, every coach, every head coach, manager, whatever you want to call them, and Richard Montague said they weren't bothered about what tag it is, although he is head coach, he's manager, head coach, doesn't matter. But every manager is under pressure, to get results. Certainly a club like Notts. Now, what you could say is, and I would say, I in normal terms, I would say he came in, he was okay. It was part way through the transfer window, wasn't it? Sort of 24th, I think, of January, he was actually appointed. So, the transfer window was largely, very near the end anyway. He hasn't had time to sort of see what he's got in, what he's got out. Now, I would always say a manager needs at least one transfer window to wheel and deal. The caveat to that, why it's different, is because it's different at Notts. There's a sort of recruitment team, isn't there? And recruitment is done via the data model. And, although he has a decent say in things, it's not Stuart Maynard's final decision, I don't think, is the way my reading of it. It's almost like a coming together. But obviously he has a say. He doesn't get given players he doesn't want, I don't think. I would like to think not anyway. So, look, I've got no problem with him still being in charge for next season. And I've said before, hopefully he's still in charge in 3 years' time, because that means we've done something fantastic. What he hasn't got is going to be given carte blanche for, if we have the same season next season, no worries. We still think you're the man. We think eventually we'll get it right. I think no coach or manager has got that or should have that. Football is, as we're talking about the ruthlessness and the cutthroat nature of contract situations for players, it's just as ruthless, if not more so, for managers, head coaches, because a contract doesn't necessarily mean anything, does it? What manager gets to the end of a contract? Not many. Certainly in this day and age of football. And whilst, I'm not an advocate of, if it's not working, change your manager. And if that don't work, change your manager again and keep changing them until you get someone that fits. Because there's no, and as Knox was, there's no process in that. There's no framework structure. That's just, pulling numbers out of a hat and hoping something works. There's got to be a process and a structure. But by the same token, the other side of the fence, there has got to be progress and results seen. So, everybody's only got a finite amount of time before, you reach that level of, are we getting the results we need? Yes or no? And if it's no, then okay, the plug's pulled and you go down a different route. So he definitely needs results. He definitely needs, stating the absolute obvious that we can all say, he definitely needs to improve statistically on what we're seeing in the 19 games that he's took charge of at the end of this season. Just under a point a game is not going to buy him a lot of time at the start of next season. But given the recruitment that we're hoping is going to be made over the next few days and weeks, given the improvements that's going to be made over the next few weeks in the personnel, then by default almost, not that he becomes a better coach, but he has better tools to work with. And therefore the statistics should, not definitely, but should go in that upward trajectory. And hopefully we could get up to the start that we had last season, but then maintain it. So it's not too far away because they did it this season. This season that we're calling a disappointment started brilliantly well. Yes, I know it was under a different coach, but it started brilliantly well before the wheels sort of came off. Next season, there's no reason we can't do the same. And when you add in improved players, improved signings, then I still don't see a problem. I still don't see the way that Notts play with all the weapons that they possess. Again, we've not spoken about Jody, Macca, Dan Crowley, those that may or may not be here. But again, the club have worded that they're under contract and they expect them to be here. So Notts will be stronger next season. If they're not, what happens? Ultimately, the coach usually pays with his job. But we certainly don't want to see that. We want the strong start, strong season, go and make it successful. And by successful, I mean playoffs or promotion. And then we're absolutely fine. And I see no reason why we can't do that, given the right tools. The club do the business in the transfer market. There really are going to be not a lot of excuses next season. So, or certainly less excuses. Like I say, you can't guarantee anything. It's a tough league, football league from the National League. What we've got to just sort of sanitize ourselves with a little bit is, let's not ever expect another National League season like it was. That was non-league football. Yeah. This is professional league football. Even in Notts' best season, we are not going to get 106, 107 points and goals.
As Wrexham proved. As Wrexham proved themselves with their unlimited budget.
Exactly. They went out from last season's squad, improved it with big signings, James McLean, Stephen Fletcher, Jack Marriott later on in the season, big wages for all them sort of things. They get automatic promotion and well done to them, but it was certainly no romp like the National League was. So we are talking about different levels. You've just got to slightly adjust not your standards, but you've got to slightly adjust expectations. But that is not adjusting expectations. I mean, we finished 14th this season, 12th next season is progress. No, I'm talking about its success still means promotion, either via the playoffs or promotion, but it ain't going to be 100 and something points, because if that happens, then, well, I'll do the first one of these in the following season in my pants, Paul. That's how confident I am that it won't happen.
It's an interesting thought, but you're on safe ground still. Daniel Lees, I think the head coach has got rid of some of the toxic players that didn't really want to potentially play for him. He hasn't had the best start, but wipe the slate clean and let's see what happens at the start of next season. David Skinner proffers, if he loses 6 out the first 10, he has to go. There is no point in dragging it out, as the season will be over before it has started. Ian G says, I'm not an anti-SM, but don't see him lasting much after October. No spark and lacks tactical now. Sedo, for me, he has to show a good level of results in the first 10 games. I'll tell you one other thing, just to finish off on with regards to the head coach. And apologies if this has been debated before on on Radio Nottingham or elsewhere, but obviously I don't get to hear much of it with travelling up and down. And one fan had mentioned this to me, and I'd never really noticed it till Saturday. So half-time whistle goes, players zip off down the tunnel, far side of the pitch, and then I look up 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later, and Stuart and his coaching staff are then leaving the confines of their dugout to walk across and go into the tunnel. Normally, there's not a right or a wrong. Normally, the head coach will be straight in the dressing room, won't he? Ready for the players. He's got his 15 minutes, gets into them or whatever. I mean, is that something you've come across before? Is that something I'm sure you will have noticed it, Steph, because you notice everything. But it just surprised me a bit to actually observe it for the first time on Saturday.
Yeah, it's very much I say modern thing, but it's certainly since my career, the back end of my career, since it's more it's more considered, I think, is the way I would talk about halftime team talks and things like that. You know, we've all seen the videos of your Neil Warnocks and people like that, got ranting, raving at half times, end of games, where there's passion and there's rollickings dished out, and there's back and forth, and it's like a pressure cooker of a situation sort of thing. And I think the more modern day game has gone away from that. I'm not saying that there aren't rollickings and words and all that sort of thing had at times, but I think what happens is, and quite a bit, is that coaches and managers like to gather themselves and be together and decide, right, what we're going to say, what we're going to do at half time based on what's happened. What in that first half, we're not going to just go in on emotion and shout and scream and kick things and do this, because in the cold light of day, when you sit down and analyse that, does that always get you the result, or by result, does that get you an improvement in the second half? No, it doesn't. So they're more considered. They might take 2 or 3 minutes and then go in and throw the hairdryer treatment and all that, but they tend to do it. Now, I think the reason might have been on Saturday is that if you notice, the dugout's the opposite side to there's like a little building that you're changing at Forest Green, so there's not loads of space really for coaches to gather, have a chat. So I imagine it was basically something like that. Look, speaking with his assistants, going, look, what do we make of that? What do we need to change? What approach do you think we should go in at half time? And they'll be together, and it'll be a calculated sort of way of doing things. I think at Meadow Lane, why you don't see that is because there's loads of room in the stand. There's loads of room. They've got offices they can go into, have a word before they go in the dressing rooms.
Yeah.
At away grounds, you haven't always got that option. So it's just, I think that's just symptomatic of the modern day approach is largely, not totally, but largely slightly different to how it used to be.
Good answer. Yeah, I genuinely just was just surprised by the length of time as much as anything else, and it wasn't something I'd ever really picked up on before. Leslie Watson, maybe we can get players from Wrexham, Stockport, and Mansfield's released squad. Now they need better players in League One. Ian Hayward echoes your point, Dale. Forest Green Rovers ground is a little weird and disorganised anyway, having to go across the pitch to the dugout. Bartosz Białkowski, out of contract at Millwall. Jurgen and a few others have mentioned him as a possible goalkeeper target. Andrew Blatherwick, among others, talking about the playoff final. Bromley or Solihull Moors for you, Stel?
Solihull, Bromley's a million miles away. Solihull, definitely. But, geographically, I'd like Solihull to win for the sake of travelling. But Bromley have been up there, haven't they, all season. It's amazing, isn't it? We didn't pay too much attention to the National League all the way through it. Chesterfield were romping it. That was all we ever needed to know. So, geographically Solihull, but whoever, we've been there. We know what a day out it is. We know it's a great day out for those that win. But I would imagine Bromley probably slightly favourites. But it's all on the day.
Yeah. Okay, we're coming to the end. Looking back on the season, Best moment for you? Best moment.
Best moment. Off the top of my head, Paul, honestly, because it's a disappointment, I struggle to think of a one best moment. We got beat twice by Mansfield. Wrexham did the double over us. Stockport did the double over us. We lost to Sutton first day of the season. Best moment. It's got to be, I don't know, it's got to be some of the goals that we've scored. I think the amount of goals, the entertainment that they've provided by stepping up a level, seeing Macca end up as top scorer, seeing Jody get the player of the season for the division. I mean, it's not a moment, is it? But I'm struggling to think off the top. You've landed that one on me off the top of my head.
And we don't rehearse this show. It probably shows, but just in case you think we rehearse everything, we don't. We like to do it live. I mean, I tell you, for me, one of the most, I think, satisfying displays was actually, which may surprise people given my views, would be the win at Newport under Stuart Maynard. Because for me, that was about as complete a performance as we gave. And people say it was only Newport, but I think Newport had won 4 or 5 on the spin before that, and we've gone down there. We played a 4. And although we didn't quite keep a clean sheet, the goal they scored was the 90th minute or something like that. And I just thought that was a really good, all-round, solid performance. And it was just so frustrating that we then went on a long losing run after it, when you thought perhaps there's a little formula here, And I just thought, I just felt very satisfied having gone there, rain belting down. I thought, hey, for me, that's like an efficient way of winning a game. That's like a Wrexham or a Mansfield or a Stockport way of winning a game, a job professionally well done.
Yeah, wouldn't disagree. If you're talking about performances, that's right up there. I think, despite all the goals that were scored throughout the season, I think that was, you're right, probably one of the best complete performances, certainly on the road, as you mentioned. So, yeah, again, and I think that's symptomatic, isn't it, of why we haven't been ultimately successful this season, is that you can't think of one shining light of a moment. There's been plenty of really good stuff. It's just been swallowed up with loads of pretty bad stuff along the way. Stupid mistakes, individual errors, conceding obscene amounts of goals. Having a 5-all. I think we ended up the stat. We conceded 5 4 times. We conceded 4 times this season. 3 loads of times. There was so much, I say, disappointing. So much that was not good enough that it sort of swallowed some of the sublime football that we have played. We have played some amazing football, as we did in the National League. But you've got to follow that, or for it to stand out, you've got to play that amazing football, which we will do, but it's got to be allied with success and winning. As we always say, old school, it never changes. It's got to be successful. It's got to win. Does it matter what it looks like? No. But if you can play well, that gives you the structure to go and win and be successful, then that's the utopia. And hopefully, like I say, with a good summer, good recruitment, then that's what Notts are going to be aiming for next season. It's going to be difficult, never easy, but that's got to be the ultimate target for next season.
A few thoughts from the flock, he says, getting his words out. Pythagorean, a season full of dodgy penalties given against us. Duncan Connery, best moment for me was Jim O'Brien saluting the cop after scoring. Jordan says, best moment was Macca's second against Doncaster in August. Goal straight from the kickoff without Donny getting a touch of the ball. How things change. Ian G says he's looking forward to seeing Neil Warnock at the Playhouse in June. Memories of great times of the club. Adam Kent, best moment, Grimsby away after we went 5-4 up. Remember that? Yeah, that was an ebb and flow game. Shane Walker, thank you to both of you for the insights for the season. We'll be here waiting for next season to start. Jatta scoring at Bradford. Yeah, I'm thinking the header at the far post coming in. And of course, he got the one-on-one there as well, didn't he? Jatta signing and showing his worth has to be the highlight of the season for me, says Scott Taylor. Andy Adcock, Macca's first league goal and first hat-trick. Nathan, best moment, Macari, yeah. Little Macari scoring that very excellent strike away at Gillingham. Doncaster or Salford away, says Ian Cooksey. The 5-5 at Grimsby, says Chris Gosling. Ian G, 5-0 Morecambe at home. Daniel Lees, a tad more sarcastically, the final whistle on Saturday. Never let it be said that sarcasm is the lowest form of wit. Right, well, that's about done it, I think, for not just tonight, but for the season. Thank you to all of the guests we've had on this year. Chloe's been a regular. We've had Martin Allen as a guest. Thank you to the club for supplying officials, and most recently, to both the chief executive and Richard Montague for coming on the show as well to keep us updated. The club have their own invitation fans forum, I think, later this week. So I'm sure there'll be lots more questions asked there. Stel, look, thank you so much for all your time, all your effort. It's been very, very much appreciated. As our flock say, it helps keep them in touch from all parts of the world. So thank you very much indeed for your time.
Yeah, pleasure, Paul. As always, been enjoyable. Always enjoyed talking football and talking nuts. So I hope everyone has a good summer.
Absolutely, we echo that. We both like our little rest, summer sports as opposed to winter sports. So Stella will be opening the batting.
If it stops raining,
I'll be put out to pasture for a while. Magpie United, the Magpie Circle sponsored Magpie United, who has me as their manager and my son as the left winger, clinched promotion to MPEL, the top flight of MPEL, for next season. So that should be fun and games. So well done to all at Magpie United. Everyone have a great, great summer. We will not be back in May, June, or July. We will not be back until August. So please apologise while we recharge the batteries. We're all eagerly going to look forward. I think we're going to study and analyse the recruitment. We'll all be watching 7-second videos, you know, of the next Thiago Silva or whatever they're going to be. Recruitment is not an exact science, but I think we can all agree if we can get a bit more defensive solidity, I think we will all be happy. And here's to getting 75 points or whatever it is that would get us into the playoffs for next season. Thank you very much indeed to one and all of you for watching it. That's the reason we do it. So thank you for your support, participation and interaction. Goodbye 23-24. We look forward to seeing you again in August. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
Cheers.